Okay, and welcome back. This is video number 2 in our series, where we're mostly going to be going over basic fortress setup and farming, a few other things, digging, keyboard commands, that kind of thing. Very important stuff. So the very first thing we're going to do is take a look around on the main screen here. This is your primary view, and admittedly it does take some getting used to. You can see here a lot of different symbols for different things. Some of them are flashing. The game does automatically pause when you start, so we're not going to have any worries there. So I want to go over some of the symbology here. If you have tile packs, it's going to be a little bit different for you because a lot of the stuff on tile packs are going to look, real. This is some sort of a sand or soil. That's a tree or a plant of some sort. Commas, asterisks, and all that kind of stuff are either plants if they're outside, or some sort of soily type thing inside, depending on exactly what kind of soil you have. We have trees here, here, and here. Clubs and spades are mostly trees. And this here is a dwarf. Hello, dwarf. That is a goose. That's a chicken. That's probably the male chicken, because he's a chick, and you can see that he's red, so he's a little bit different colored. Red typically means young. More dwarves, probably a water buffalo there. Another chicken, another goose, that's probably the male goose that we brought. Some more chickens, or maybe cats. Another couple of dwarves, more geese, one of the dogs. Actually, that's a chicken, that's a chicken, that's a cat right there, and that's the other cat. Coloration does make a difference for different animals. Okay, and that's the main. This is water right here, down slopes leading into the water. A lot of plants here. You can see this is pretty heavily forested, a lot of little spades and the little, I'm not even sure what those are, but they're all over the place. So a lot of trees and such. This is your command list, and basically anything that you want to do, you'll be doing it through keyboard commands. And we'll go over what each individual type of keyboard command does and what it can be used for. This is a mini-map. A lot of information in here that I'm just going to ignore, and using the tab key, make it go away. This is the way I usually play, but I wanted to show you everything that's possible. Gives you a pretty good wide area of view, and you still have your command list, which you can get rid of if you know all the various commands, but you know what, it's just convenient to have. So, very first thing we're going to do here is take a look at the look command. This is K on your keyboard. The look command allows you to look at a thing. You can do some basic interactions with it, depending on exactly what it is. Things like dense grama, or dense zoyosia, that kind of stuff. That's just grass. So not much interaction there. A shrub of some sort, I could harvest the shrub and get some sort of a food off of it, maybe, or maybe not. There's a random chance that it just won't drop anything. That's a palm tree there. Nice. Acacia tree. More acacia. More acacia. Actually, got a lot of acacia on here. That's gonna make for some good beds. We like acacia beds. The specific type of wood doesn't really matter too much, although there are some very special woods that you'll want to look at on the wiki. There's actually one wood that is cold, and as such is basically fireproof. It's really kind of cool. I was right, that is a water buffalo, male, was used to pull the cart. We didn't actually bring him, the dwarves just get him. You can see that's our hunter, and that's one of our just regular diggers. And that's our other digger. That's our woodworker. There's our leader, along with a stray water buffalo cow. Ooh, we have 2 water buffaloes, male and female. Well, that's going to be useful. There's the doctor. There's one of our chickens, dog, and a goose. We can use, when you have multiple items listed, you can use the plus and minus keys to go through and see if there's any interactions you can do with them. Animals, you can go to and view the animal by hitting enter. It gives you a description of the animal. In this case, it's a dog. So, male dog, kind of brown, tan, and cream, with azure eyes. That's interesting. And then we can look at the goose. Gigantic goose. Brown feathers, copper skin, black eyes. Sounds like an evil goose to me. We can even, to a certain extent, look at some of our people. So we can hit enter there, and this gives us what is the thoughts and feelings initial screen. If we hit enter again, it tells us a lot about the dwarf. Born on the 12th of Obsidian in the year 3. This dwarf's kind of old. I mean, it's been 55 years, give or take. Very content. This information up here is actually kind of important. This will tell us how happy the dwarf is. Happy dwarves are productive dwarves. This will also tell us why the dwarf has been unhappy. Let's see, citizen of a bunch of different things. There's a lot of information that is given in here. Quick to tire, susceptible to disease. You can learn some stuff about their stats that are hidden in the background. Their likes and dislikes are important because if they rise to a position of nobility, they will often want things made out of things that they like. So they'll be looking, this guy, when he becomes a leader, might look for things to be made out of brimstone or sterling silver, or be studded with star sapphires, something like that. And here's a lot of information about him. All dwarves need alcohol to get through the working day. And all dwarves are short, sturdy creatures fond of drink and industry. So, this line here, likes to working outdoors and grumbles only mildly at inclement weather, can actually change a lot. There's something called cave adaptation. A dwarf that spends enough time underground, when they come up above ground, become fairly ill. So you have to do things to try to keep them, from either coming up above ground or keep them happy when they do. And he has some friendships. We haven't had any time, so these friendships here had to have occurred before they even showed up. These are the gods that this particular dwarf worships, and he knows these other people. Not very friendly with them, but he knows them. We can even move through the entire relationship tree and just go crazy that way. It gets crazy. And again, we can customize. So, moving around the screen with either the arrow keys or your keypad, and you can get all that information about a lot of things. This is a wagon, and so forth. The next viewing capability is through viewing units, which we're going to hit V for. And as long as you're within a certain distance, which is actually, pretty much however far it can be, it goes immediately to the nearest living creature. Sort of. And so we're going to look at specifically Dumat here. This screen is our general information screen. tells us a lot about what jobs he has training in. We can see Dumont is trained in wood, cutting, and carpentry. And not much else. Right now he doesn't have an active job because we haven't given him any jobs, and frankly there's been 0 time has passed since we started this world. Or started this embarkment site, I should say. If we hit I, we go to his inventory, and using the plus or minus keys we can go through and see all the various things that he happens to own on his person. He's got some trousers, a tunic, a coat. Actually got some really nice stuff. I mean, he's got cave spider silk cloaks, giant bat leather cloak, cave spider silk tunic. That's actually really nice. Clothing will wear down over time, but we're not going to deal with that right now, because we've got some time. If we hit P for preferences, we have actually 2 sub-menus here. Labor and work animals. Labor, we're not actually going to do much in here, because we have access to the utility, which I'm now going to show you. Dwarf Therapist. And typically, you don't start Dwarf Therapist until you're actually in your proper fortress. Have your fortress going. This allows us to, at a glance, see all of the different dwarves we have in our fortress, and we can organize them by different groupings, or even group them by nothing at all, in which case they organize by first name. So, actually, I'm going to do a little bit of stuff in here. I know that I need to turn mining laborers on these 2. I'm actually going to turn it on the dock. I'm going to highlight the leader here. When they first come into a place, if they don't have any skill ranks in it, the laborers aren't turned on. There we go. Alright, so turning on a labor means that the dwarf is allowed to do that job. If the labor is turned off, then they aren't allowed to do that job at all, ever. And if you look here, you can see, if you hover over it, you can see that the amount of skill that they have trained in any given skill as a dot. As they get more skilled, the dot gets bigger until they become legendary, at which point it turns into a diamond, and that's really kind of cool. You can see their happiness levels here, and if you hover over them themselves, you get a lot more information about them. You can see here he's content, and can't move the thing, so I can't really point it out, but all the skills and a couple other things. Really interesting stuff, but a lot of it. This is version 20, and it's actually kind of nice. I like it better than the previous ones. Okay, but we could also go, if we really wanted to, go into the labor screen here, and with the plus and minus key we can do that all manually. So, like here, we go into woodworking, turn off carpentry if we wanted to, turn off wood cutting, or turn on crossbow making, but we're not going to do that right now. The reason why Dwarf Therapist is so useful is, imagine having to go in to every single dwarf that you have and manually setting up all of their laborers. If you need a job, or if you think you don't have any dwarves that are tasked to do a labor, you need to go through every single dwarf to find out. Dwarf Therapist. Oh look, I don't have anybody who has wood burning. I can set somebody up. Not going to, but I could. The other thing you can do in the preferences menu is go to work animals. We currently don't have any animals trained as either hunting animals or war animals. But if we did, we could assign them to follow a person around. And that can give the dwarf a little bit of protection, or can help them hunt, which is both kind of cool. W gives you the wounds. If the dwarf had suffered any wounds, these would be different colors. The different colors basically determining how bad the damage is. Yellow, kind of bad. Red, really bad. Kind of a blue-green, aqua color, really, really bad. And although there's a fairly comprehensive list, each of these is actually subdivided into different components. So a dwarf can actually have damage specifically to the third toe on their right foot. And yes, it does get that specific sometimes. Z gets us back to here, where we can look at their specific, how they're feeling, what they're doing, what they're looking at, and that kind of stuff. So that's what we're going to cover with that. You can see some similar things on just regular animals, like this stray hen. You can't give them, she doesn't have any skills because she's a hen. Doesn't really have any inventory, no preferences, but you can set up animals to be ready for slaughter, and a wounds list. And wow, incredibly skinny yet gigantic overall. Impressive. Okay. There is a third looking ability, and it's also how you'll set building tasks over time, and that's Q. Now we only have one building on the entire map right now, and that's our wagon. It counts as a building. We could remove it. It doesn't really have any other tasks, but we're not going to right now. We'll get more into that in a little bit. So, the very first thing we want to do is we kind of want to go around and look at our map, see what we've got. And I'm thinking that's probably sand. Yes, it is. Sand can be used to make glass, and glass can be used to make, well, windows and stuff for trade and things like that. Takes a little bit of setting up to get glass going, though. You can see my river here. It's actually a really nice river. But I think I made a boo-boo when I set up this particular site. Yes, I did. That's our only hill. We have no vertical capabilities here. Well, that's just going to be a challenge then. Okay. Does this hill go anywhere? Nope, it is precisely one level above the mean. Well. Okay. Not too big of a deal. We can work with it. It does change how we're going to do some things, though. Normally, what I would do is I would bore into the side of a hill or a mountain and set up a chamber pretty deep inside. That gives me a lot of security. I don't really have that option right here, so what I'm going to, because when creatures spawn, whether they be friendly or enemies, they spawn at the edges, and on this map there's basically nothing but edges right by the gate, so I'm not going to build right there. I am actually going to build underground. Okay, which leads us to our first set of actually doing something instructions. So to designate an area for something to occur, you hit D for designations. And then you can choose what you want to do. Mine, channel, so on and so forth. We'll get into what each one of these does. Right now we're going to chop down some trees, because trees are handy to have. So I'm going to put my X right here, and this is going to be the top left corner, although it could be the bottom left corner, or it could even be the bottom right corner if I wanted it to, but top left corner of a triangle, or a rectangle here. Hit enter once to lock in the corner, and we're going to go select the other corner, the opposite corner. and hit enter again. Now, every tree that was inside that area has been designated to be cut down, which is kind of useful. We could do the same thing with gather plants, but we're really not going to because we don't have any place to put the plants that we gathered. Instead, we are actually going to also order a set of downward stairways to be built. Actually, no, I changed my mind. And you can do that. Even if you've already hit enter, you can actually change your mind and change how the designation is going to be set up. In this case, I'm going to designate that we channel a 3x1 section. You're going to see why here in just a minute. What channeling does is it cuts a hole vertically down a level, and it'll eventually create a ramp, which I could remove, but in this case I want to leave in place because that's going to be the way my dwarves get out of being underground. Okay. Now I get back to the main menu, because when you're in one of the sub-menus, either the designation menu, the building menu, military menu, any of them, it automatically pauses the game for you. And then I want to hit the space bar. It's going to kind of freak out for a second as it tries to figure out a whole bunch of different paths. And good heavens. Oh, well, I guess everybody on the map decides to do something. Okay, so I'm actually going to hit U for units. This gives me a view of all the different units that are on the screen, or on the embark site. My citizens, my 7 dwarves, any pets I happen to have brought along, or have bred, or have captured and trained, and any other creatures that just happen to be, oh my goodness. So we do have a leopard on the field. That's dangerous. Barn owl, pangolin, I'm not sure what that is. I'm not sure if that's even dangerous. No, we can view the creature. Small mammal covered in hard scales, long nose and tongue that it uses to feed. Sounds like an anteater of some sort. Or maybe an armadillo. Carp are dangerous. Actually, it's rather humorous that they are so dangerous, but they are very dangerous. They will kill dwarves fairly easily. Tigerfish, yeah, that's dangerous too. River otters, probably not so dangerous. Might make some good leather. Nothing died or missing yet, which is good. This list here will get full fast. Anything that was ever in any of these 3 lists that just happens to die or go missing for more than a week ends up on this list, which is, bad. But it's going to fill up really quickly. Okay. Oops. Forgot that I hadn't turned that off. Do not disturb. Thank you very much. Okay. So you can see here, my chopper dwarf is chopping down stuff, and my digger dwarves have dug out a small channel. To move around the map, you use the arrow keys. And it is chugging a little bit, but that's okay, because I got a lot of creatures on here. And to go up or down vertically along the Z axis, the one that you're looking down, to go up is shift and then less than sign. You can kind of see the tops of the trees there. Down is shift greater than sign. And you can see, hey, look, there's some earth. We've kind of dug out here. We have ramps, so we'll be able to get into this. But I want to dig a channel, or dig a passage. Very important to keep the terminology straight here. I want to dig a passage. And we're going to make it 3 wide because dwarves can go down a passage that is only 1 wide. They are perfectly capable of doing that. If you have 2 dwarves, though, that meet along that passage, one going one way, one going the other, one of them literally has to lay down on the ground and the other one climbs over them. 3 wide passages keep that from happening as much. Okay, so I'm going to designate a nice little area for them to dig out. And at the end of that, I wanted to set up some more stairs. I want to set up some stairs. A 3x3 section of downward stairs. This area is going to be my primary defensive perimeter. And I'll probably end up filling it up with traps and maybe set up some equipment over here so I can set up weapons and that kind of thing. This defense in depth is kind of important because if anything shows up, I want to be able to stop it before it actually gets to where my dwarves are going to be. Eventually, I want to have a fortress up here surrounding my main entrance and a bunch of other stuff. It'll be really, really, really strong. But for now, let's get some dwarves digging. You can kind of see where it starts blinking. That's where they're actually doing something. That means somebody somewhere has a job right now. And they're digging through sand, which is actually really nice because they'll be able to do a lot of stuff down in here. Actually, probably do stuff over here somewhere. You always kind of want to have your layout a bit something that you're going to think about doing. Okay, so we're going to let these dwarves dig out a little bit more. I'm not sure how deep the soil goes. The only way to really do that is to either use one of the various hacks or to go through and just explore, which we're going to explore here in a minute. You can see some of my dwarves are already becoming miners. I'm going to switch screens here. Read the dwarves. Every time they dig, they gain 10 experience points. And then as they increase in their level, they'll dig faster and faster and faster. Digging through sand usually isn't too big of a deal. It's actually really easy to do. There we go. Now we have downward stairs to the next level down. And we can take a look at it, see what it is. What is this? That's gabbro. Okay. Gabbro is a type of stone, which is going to be very useful. Okay, so this is going to become my central stairwell. So I'm going to create a 3x3 section. I'm going to use up-down stairs. They're going to connect to the stairs that are right here from above, and then they're going to keep going down. And I'm going to dig down probably no more than about 5 levels. This is just the initial set. Eventually I will dig down even further, but you want to kind of stagger it so that you have a stairwell, central stairwell here, and then one maybe a little bit over here, but down further, and so on. Because if a dwarf gets knocked down the stairs, there's no way they can catch themselves until they are all the way to the bottom. Which means they typically go splat if you have a column of stairs that are going, 50 or 60 levels. Because, well, they fell 50 or, well, let's see, it's somewhere around 300, 400 feet if they fell 50 levels. And I'm pretty sure even you would go splat for that kind of distance. So, yeah. Okay, and they're already starting to dig my stairwell. Yay! Okay. Yay, we have have stairwells. Okay. And it looks like they're going to just dig their way down, so that's not a big deal. But we did find stone pretty easily. Okay, we got gabbro, some more gabbro, yet more gabbro. Wow, okay. Well, there's granite. Granite's good. It's hard, but it's good. We'll make some interesting things out of that. And we've got one level of sand, which we'll be able to really use, which is kind of nice. Okay. So we'll be able to set up some farms and things. One of the first things we're going to want to do, though, is set up a meeting hall. Because, let's face it, dwarves above ground aren't exactly the safest place in the world. So I'm going to dig out a nice little area here. Now, when you give dwarves a job, they actually like to do things from the bottom and the upper left corner. So the lowest level, the deepest level, and the upper left-hand corner. Don't ask me why, that's just the way the algorithm is written for where they choose to task. There we go. Okay, and we can see here our cutter has gone through and he's cut down a whole bunch of trees for me, all those trees that I had designated. And now they are actually just logs. And logs are good. Aha! So we finished that. Okay, now we're going to set up what's called a zone. Zones are areas that do a specific function. Whether it be a hospital, or a meeting place, or something like that. So I get you into zone selection, and then you just lay down a zone just like you would designate an area. In this case, I'm going to set up a zone that is this big. Zones also have a maximum size, so they can't be beyond a certain size vertically or horizontally. But that's okay. Now, you can kind of see, it'll tell you what a zone can be used for. In this case, you have 0 squares of water source or fishing, no pits or ponds. There's a lot of sand here, but no clay. And in this case, we're going to turn it into a meeting area. Yay. Pens and pastures are where you store animals if you don't want them to be inside or just randomly wandering around wherever. You can put them in a pasture, which is something else I'm about to do. So I'm going to set up a zone right about here. I'm going to include all of that. We'll probably end up shrinking the zone later, but that's okay. For now, we have some water for some of our animals, and we're going to set up a pen. And then you can use Shift-N to assign specific animals to it. Now, some animals need grass, or at least food of some sort. Water buffaloes need a lot of it. Goslings, well, geese, hens, and chickens and such don't really need the zone, and flesh eaters like cats and dogs never need to be pasteurized unless you want to just store them someplace convenient. But grass eaters do need to have access to grass, and a lot of it. If you go look at the wiki, it'll tell you exactly how much each one needs. Alright, so now we've got that set. And there we go. Oh, what is that? Is that a barn owl? Yay, okay. So that's interesting. Now I've got a bunch of dwarves who are going to haul all my animals over to the pen. And then once they're in there, the animals will stay in unless something comes along to try to kill them. Which would be bad, but that's a leopard right there. Almost guarantee you that's the leopard. If he decides to become aggressive, I'll probably lose some animals, which would be bad. But there's not much I can do about it right now. Okay. Now, when you have a meeting area, all your dwarves will try to go and hang out in the meeting area as much as possible. Thing is, your wagon counts as a meeting area. You're going to hear me counting off areas here. I like to set up central corridor sections. And I know not everybody goes for the same construction method that I do. That's fine. They are allowed to build however they wish. And I want to show you my method. So I build... Wait a minute, that doesn't look right. No, that doesn't. Why doesn't that look right? 2, 3, 4... Oh, because it isn't right. Oops. Miscounted. Oh well. Okay. There we go. Thought something looked a little weird. Okay. So any designation you've ever made, you can remove the designation. And that's what I'm going to do here. There we go. And we're just going to let them go dig that out. Now, once we actually have this all properly dug out, and this area here, I'm going to create my first real stockpile. And we'll do that using P for piles, or stockpiles. And my first stockpile is basically just going to be there to get everything out from the rain and the weather and everything else. So it's going to be a special stockpile that's just going to have everything. It's going to be able to store anything and everything. Okay. You can kind of see how most of my dwarves are now hanging out down here where it's a little bit safer. Hi dwarves. And my mining dwarves are mining. Ooh, yay, red spinel. I have found gems. Gems are good. Gems are very good. Okay. So... Alright, I want to let my dwarves mine for a little bit, and I'll pause for now. We'll come back when the dwarves have stopped mining, and we're ready to go on to the next site. Okay, dwarves have finished clearing out the main section, and we've got all of our little things filled in. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to first off remove that meeting zone, because I'm going to replace it with a slightly larger one. There we go. Okay. Now we have a nice little area here that's been dug out for us. So I'm going to hit P, and we're going to create a custom stockpile. So we're going to hit T first to get custom settings. Now we can use the actual arrow keys in here. We're going to enable food, siege ammo, furniture and siege ammo, regular ammo, coins, just because, why not? We are actually going to allow bars and blocks, gems, finished goods, leather, cloth, weapons, and armor. And you can notice I'm leaving some things out. Stone, for instance. If I was to allow stone, it would probably very quickly become just full of just stone. And a full stockpile can't store anything else. Refuse and corpses, we're actually going to put another stockpile upstairs. That is going to be outside, because refuse and corpses both can rot if they are inside, and that creates miasma. Miasma makes your dwarves unhappy. You can also make them violently ill. Animals, we're not really going to store in a stockpile because we have better uses for them. And same thing goes for wood. Same as stone. We're not going to store wood in here just because it's going to get this main stockpile just full too fast. So now that we know what we're stocking, we're going to go ahead and just stockpile the entire section. Now that's a little bit on the crazy side, but what we can do is we now remove designations and clear out a section where the dwarves are going to be able to walk fairly easily. And it will still count as one giant stockpile. So if I wanted to go through later on and say change any settings on the stockpile, I hit the Q because that allows me to interact with buildings, and for some reason stockpiles do count as a building, and now I interact with the entire stockpile. And I can change the settings. Let's say I no longer wanted food. Well, I do, but if I no longer wanted it, I could disable it. But I'm not going to. And it would turn it off for the entire stockpile. Stockpiles are a good way of controlling where resources are and how they are used. But that's something slightly more advanced. We've just gotten into the basics of it right now. And now you can see all my dwarves are going. I have no idle dwarves. All my dwarves are going and hauling stuff around for me. Okay. And they're going to empty out the wagon, because the wagon has all sorts of stuff in it. All the things that we basically set up initially. But since we're down here, we're up here anyways, what I want to do now is I want to set up another stockpile. And this one is specifically set up just for refuse. No, I'm not going to set it right there. I want to set it way over here. Yeah. Is that our top corner? And not on any of the water. Now you can see how the trees are interrupting the stockpile. Trees will interrupt stockpiles. If I try to build it over water, that would interrupt it. If I was to chop down these trees, there wouldn't be a stockpile underneath. There would just be nothing there. Well, there'd be a log, but that's it. Now I'm going to talk about something else that is here on the stockpile setting up page. If you see here your / or asterisks, divide or multiply on your number pad, changes the numbers of reserved barrels. Reserved barrels basically says that if you have an empty barrel, it is set aside as a piece of furniture until a shop of some sort needs it, at which point the shop can go grab it and fill it up. Things like regular food will not be stored in reserved barrels. Now, when you have a very young fortress, you probably don't want a lot of reserved barrels, but you do want some so that you can do things like alcohol production. So we're going to set up some reserved barrels, 5 of them, and we're going to let time pass again. Okay. Actually, since I'm not going to do what I usually do, slightly modify it anyways, Normally what I do is this section back here I would turn into a fairly large singular stockpile of everything. But I'm modifying my norm here because frankly I don't want to put a stockpile right by the front door that I can't easily secure. Because I can normally fairly easily secure this area here, but since I don't actually have a hill there, it makes things a little bit different. Not too severely, but a little bit. Okay, so we're going to let that run for a bit. Okay, I'm actually going to do something here. I'm going to set up my first sets of farms. Oops, nope, don't want that. I want it to be there. Okay. So, farming is very important. Dwarves like to eat, and the best way to get them food, well, one of the better ways to get them food is to farm it. It's secure, it's regular, and you can control exactly what you're going to get out of it. So I'm going to set up a pair of rooms that are going to be set aside just for food production. And when my dwarves get some time, they're going to go through and they'll mine those out. In the meantime, everybody's still hauling stuff from the wagon. Fortunately, my entrance isn't all that far from my stockpile down there, which you can see is starting to get filled up. And I still have plenty of food stored away, so I'm not too worried about getting the farm started right now. There we go. One thing that is peculiar to my particular method is that I like 5x5 rooms. They work really effectively with setting up areas for workshops. They also work really well for bedroom barracks, where you can have 4 beds to a room, and each room be an individual, or each bed be its own individual room, so everybody feels like they have their own room, and it can be really nice, but you still have shared rooms for certain creatures of the night, like vampires. Stupid, bloody vampires. Okay. You can kind of see my dog moving around there. Eventually I'll get... excuse me. Eventually I'll get somebody to train that dog, and either turn it into a war dog or a hunting dog. I'll probably make my female dogs war dogs and my male dogs hunting dogs. That way I keep the females safe and breeding, and the male dogs can go out and be escorts for hunters and such. Okay, almost have my first farming chamber set up. Farms can only be built on either mud or soil of some sort. And soil is sand, loam, clay, peat, and any combination of those. So if it's a sandy loam or a loamy clay, that all counts as places where you can grow food. And you can grow food above ground. Oops, wrong way. I will eventually be setting up farms above ground, because there's some things that will grow above ground and some foods that will only grow underground. But the main staple of dwarven diet grows underground. We're going to set it up here in just a second. Okay, so the dwarf has just finished. Oh look, sleeping dwarf. We'll get him a bed eventually. Okay, so to set up our farm plot, we hit B for build, because farm plots are a type of building, and P for farm plots. We could also hit the plus or minus keys and scroll through the list and hit enter there. And you can see where the X is, it's blocked. There's no mud or soil left for a farm. Mud is left by water, which means, if I do it down here, it's not blocked, but it's all rock. I would have to flood this area and then let the water drain away in order to get mud. And quite frankly, I'm not wanting to deal with that much headache yet. So I go over here to sand, and sand is perfect for growing food on. U and K will expand our section, so we get the 5 and 5. If I wanted it a little bit smaller, I can hit, M and H, but I like the 5 by 5. And we'll hit enter to place it. And then we have to wait for a guy who has, actually, I'll show you. So Q, to look at buildings, we get close enough to the building, and it says it's waiting for construction. It needs somebody who has the labor farming fields active. Well, farming fields, we got a guy who has that labor. He'll be coming along eventually. If we wanted to, we could suspend the construction, and it says this job is paused. We don't want anybody to do it until we say we want you to do it again. But we don't really want to suspend it. We could also remove it if we decided that we didn't like where it was, or if we needed to move it someplace else, or we just needed the space for something. But you know what? We need that spot. We specifically set it up just for mining, or for farming, I should say. So I think another thing you can do actually to look at different things is T. This allows you to look at actually just buildings and see what's inside the building. So the wagon, counting as a building, is made up of 3 oak logs. You can tell that by the B's there. And it's holding 2 dwarven wine barrels, one of which is set up to be moved, as shown by the task. There's somebody who has a task involving that dwarven wine barrel. So they're almost done moving all the stuff, which is good, because I need them doing other things. Okay. One 5 by 5 farm is usually good enough to feed about, well, it depends on how many farmers you have set up, but if you only have one farmer, it's usually enough to feed about 30 or 40 dwarves, plus keep them in alcohol. Okay, oh look, they finished digging out the other section. Good. So I'm going to go over here and build B and then P for placing a farm plot, U and K to make it the size I want, and put another farm plot down. And here comes my farmer. And I have idle dwarves again. A lot of idle dwarves, actually. 6 of them, and I only have 7 dwarves. Okay, so we're going to pause real quick. Now that we've finished both these buildings, our farm plots, what we can do is we interact with them again with the Q, and we can select things to be planted. You see here the 4 different seasons, and as you hit the keys, for each one, A for spring, B for summer, C for autumn, D for winter, you cycle through what is going to be planted in that season. In spring, you can plant dimple cups. Dimple cups are used to dye leathers and cloths and things, make them, I believe, a brilliant blue. Quarry bushes, which produce quarry bush leaves and quarry bush nuts. Rock nuts, actually, rock nuts. Both of which can be used if processed in cooking. But there's a lot easier ways to cook. Sweet pods can be processed into either straight up into alcohol, or they can be processed into sugar, which is then processed into food. Plum helmets can be eaten directly, can be processed into alcohol, or they can be cooked with. Plum helmets are really nice. Cave wheat, it's wheat that grows in a cave. It can be turned into flour, which can be turned into food. Pigtails are actually, most anything can be turned into alcohol. Let's face it, most everything can be turned into alcohol. Pigtails can be actually turned into a special type of fiber, which can then be turned into thread, which can be turned into cloth, which can be then turned into clothing. Pigtails are very useful. I didn't bring any pigtail seeds with me because I'll get those eventually when we're getting ready to set up our first clothing industry structure. In the meantime, we're going to plant plum helmets. And more plum helmets. And more plum helmets. So this field, all year long, will grow plum helmets. That is sounding really weird just to say that anymore. But oh well. The only two things that will grow constantly are the dimple cups and plump helmets. There's some other stuff that you can find eventually, but you have to dig down, find caverns, and gather it. Which we'll do eventually, but that'll probably be around where we get to the Let's Play, rather than actually here. 2 farms with 1 farmer, and this should probably keep us fed for a nearly indefinite period of time, and actually probably gives a great big huge stockpile of food. So that's really good. Down here, I want to start getting into, probably getting into some of the industry down in here. We'll be putting in all sorts of stuff, and I'll make the second level down be industry, I think. Third level down, I think I'm going to turn into housing. Fourth level down, I'm going to turn into a crypt, because it will be necessary eventually, and you know, they're dwarves, they will die, so you know, better to have a crypt set up in advance. And this is about as deep as I'm going to go here, and I'm going to come over here and dig down again and just keep the process going. But I think right now, okay, so we're going to show you, see what happens. You see the farmer went down, and he went and just grabbed himself a seed. And he just planted the seed. Well, planting the seed anyways. As he gets higher and higher skill in his farming fields, he will plant the seeds faster, and when he harvests them, he will actually get more out of it. You can see how it went from being a plowed furrow, or an open field, to a planted section. So that's really good. They've planted a plump helmet. Now we're not going to starve to death. Only people who have the farming fields labor can actually plant the seeds. However, anybody, children included, and children are mostly useless, can actually harvest them once they have come to the surface. Okay, now I have a bunch of dwarves who are sitting around doing nothing. And quite frankly, that annoys me. So I'm going to get started on my second major project. The second thing I always do is I set up a cistern, because you need to make sure you have water. Water is very, very important. Without water, your dwarves can't get a bath. Without water, sick dwarves die of thirst. Without water, actually, I think that's about all you really need. But a cistern allows you to make sure that you're going to have access to water all the time. Well, water also is usable if you don't happen to have alcohol. And you can see I'm kind of setting up where I'm going to be going eventually. And the 5x5 sections are going to be rooms, whereas the 3x1 sections will eventually be corridors. Oh, now isn't that pretty? Right there. Perfect place. Yeah, that's perfect. So cut that out right there. And we're going to turn this into a much bigger room. There we go. Okay, we'll dig that out. And we will undesignate that corner right there. So a cistern will eventually be dug out in here. But for now, I'm going to finish getting this big room set up and let my dwarves dig. And dig they will. It's just going to take them a little bit of time to get up there. So, what we'll eventually end up doing is right here. Actually, I should probably... Do I want to set those aside yet? Yes. I want to set those aside right now. I want to dig channels right here. And... where do I want my stairwell to be? Yeah, I think I want my stairwell to be there, so I can dig down. Okay. So I will put in a stairwell right here, and then some up-down stairs. No, nope, stop that. Okay, I got my downstairs right there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. And then an upward stairwell. Down one more level. So now, you can see I've got a stairwell there, and just a big old column going up. Okay. Now eventually, what the dwarves will do is they'll dig up all the way to this point, and then they'll dig down to here. And I'll be able to go through and I'll show you channeling out multiple levels. So this area here I'm going to clear out, and I'm just going to dig those out eventually, and there'll be holes going down to this level, also right about there and right about there. I want to fill these in with grates, which allow water to fall down, but will allow my dwarves to walk on top of them, and hopefully allow mist to come up, because dwarves like mist. Mist is pretty. It gives dwarves happy thoughts. If I do this just right, I'll be able to actually dig a water spillway over there, which will be really nice. Oh look, they're already digging faster. Up in your upper left-hand corner, you're going to see where it has a C there, and that's for reports. And C's mean combat reports. And if you hit R, you can look at the report. And the pangolin is fighting something. But all it did was roll into a ball and unroll. I really think this is an armadillo. And I can even zoom to where it is. Now to figure out where it is. Oh, okay. Well, it's around here somewhere. Probably happened a while ago though, so not a problem. Okay. And those are some nasty looking fish. Right. Okay. But we have farms going, and our farmer is going to continue to farm and gather food up, and that's all good. I think I should start that then. Okay. I'm going to build a workshop, W, and I'm going to go through here, and I'm going to create a still. Now, a still gets placed just like the farm plots do, except for it's already of a given size. I can't adjust the size. So I'm going to put the still right here for now. I get to make the still out of different things. I can make it out of gabbro, which is what I am going to make it out of, or I can make it out of some granite or acacia logs or palm logs. I'm going to make it out of gabbro though, because I have 53 units of gabbro. I'm going to have a lot more gabbro as I dig out things like workshops, bedrooms, all sorts of things. So I'm going to have a lot of gabbro. Okay. And then basically, the dwarf who has brewing or plant gathering will come along, and he will build the still for me. And I have a dwarf with brewing. He has a brewing active, which is good, because dwarves need alcohol. Alright. In fact, here's some dwarves that need alcohol right now. You see the little blue flashy like that? That means that they're thirsty. And they're going to go to the nearest source of alcohol, and they're going to go drink it. Just like that. Now, this is not going to be a long-term building, but we also need a carpenter's wood shop to get some other basic things out of the way. Until I have an actual place for my proper workshops, this is where I'm going to have to put them. Because it's safer down here than it is upstairs. And the safety of your dwarves should always be the first thing on your mind. There we go. Okay, now we get to actually interact with a building that's completed and can do something with it. Alright, so this is a carpenter's workshop. You take lumber and you turn it into stuff that's useful. You can make shields and bucklers, training spears, swords, and axes. We'll get into these, the training spears, later when we make ourselves a danger room. That's going to be useful. Barrels, which allow you to store a lot of stuff, but there's actually a better option than making barrels. I'll show you that here, probably the next video. Blocks are literally taking a log or a chunk of rock and turning it into 4 shaped blocks. And the blocks can be used for different projects, and actually can make the projects really nice, in the eyes of your dwarves anyways. Buckets, traps, cages, armor stands. What we're really going for is beds, but you can make chairs, you can make coffins, you can make doors, Don't recommend making floodgates, hatch covers, grates out of wood. Wood is typically not fireproof and is definitely not magma proof, so it kind of goes boom whenever it runs into either one, which is a problem. Cabinets, bins, chests. Cabinets are what your dwarves store their possessions in. Bins are what they store in stockpiles. Chests are very similar to cabinets, they just hold different things. Weapons racks are used in the military, and also nobles will request really nice weapons racks. Tables, of course. Trap items. Actually, that's not a trap item, that's used in making a pump. But these are traps. Mine carts. Wheelbarrows are very useful for moving heavy objects from place to place. I'm actually going to build a couple of those because I can. So I'm going to add another task, another wheelbarrow. I'm going to build 3 of them. Pipe sections used for pumps, which we can get into later. Splints and crutches, but I've already brought 3 of those, and I don't use those very often. So, okay, now we're going to build some beds. Alright, now, we now have a queue of jobs for some dwarf to come along and do. They'll do them in order. One thing that we could do is we could go through, and instead of making, what's that, 2, 4, 6, 7 beds, perfect. Instead of making 7 beds, we can actually set it up to just do a continuous construction of that one item. So the shop will continuously make a job with that one item. Now, if you ever run out of the materials to make that item, the job gets cancelled. And when the job gets cancelled, it doesn't reappear. It's cancelled. That's where managers come in, and we can do managers later because we actually need a proper office for the manager. Right now we only need 7 beds anyways. And there we go. So now our woodcutter is going to go get himself some wood, and he's going to go cut himself he's going to go get himself some wood, and he's going to make himself a wheelbarrow. Actually make 3 of them, and then he's going to make some beds. Oh, that's interesting. I wasn't expecting to hit that. Okay, that works. Okay. Now you'll notice I de-designated this section. Water can flow across diagonals, and I don't want this area flooding yet because I don't have any way of controlling the flood, and this is an infinite source of water. So it would very definitely flood my entire fortress. And then I would be out of a game because, well, that would be, flooded fortresses are no fun. I wouldn't even have a way to recover it later. That's just terrible. Alright. Wait a minute. What? What are those? Lungfish? How did lungfish get inside my... Okay. Whatever. Weird, but okay. Alright, and they've dug down to that level. And apparently I found gold somewhere. Yay! Okay, so now we have the first level of our cistern built. And it's kind of ready to go. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to dig the second level out. We're going to make sure we have our reference point here. And we're going to channel. We're going to channel all the way over to here. but we're also going to remove the designation over the staircase, because if we channel over the staircase, the dwarves no longer have a way to get up. They eventually starve to death, and that makes people very unhappy. So the dwarves are now going to go in there, and they're going to dig themselves out a nice little, another downward section. And we'll do that all the way down until we hit this level. And then at that level we'll have this area all cleared out, all through about there. About there, I guess. And then we'll just pick up all the rocks that we have down here and we'll move them someplace safe so we can actually use them. And I'll end up flooding this area up, and faint yellow diamond. I've never struck that before. That's kind of cool. Red spinel. Ooh. I got pretty stuff coming up. Nice gems. Okay, well, that'll be nice. That'll be useful eventually. You can sell gems for quite a bit. They're worth, well, they're worth as much as gems would be. Alright, so we now have a still constructed. We have farming going. We have a dwarf that is now constructing... What's he up to constructing now? He's building beds. That's a happy dwarf because he'll make some beds. You see, I've already got wheelbarrows here, and I've got some beds there. Cancel store item and stockpile item inaccessible. That's because somebody moved it. Dwarves are doomed sometimes. If an object moves when a job's already been declared for it, the dwarves can no longer find where it is, so they just cancel the job. They don't even bother trying to look for it. Alright, and we're going to do this again. And every time I do this, my dwarves get a little more experience. Let's look at my dwarves here. Okay, dwarves are mostly happy, mostly content at least. You can see why they're content. Oh, we don't have enough chairs. And they don't have beds. Oh, we got some family members among us. Okay. And you can see they're already at level 6. Proficient. The only other proficient anything we have is the hunter, and it would cost us a whole bunch of points to do. So that's something there. Alright. Well, let's give them some beds, I guess. These will be temporary beds. So we want to build beds. Normally I go with a grid starting here and then going up there and then up there and then up there, and that way I have a walkway around everybody's bed, but I don't really have I don't have the ability right now to do that. There we go. And you'll see these two beds get picked up and moved over here. If a bed has not been turned into a room, which I'll show you in a minute, then anybody can sleep in it. And they'll just take turns and take shifts. Nobody will claim the bed for themselves. If somebody claims a bed, only they and their spouse can actually sleep in it. Oh look, I have gems. I have lots of gems. Yay, gems. Gems are good. What was... Okay, why did I jump? Why did I jump? Why did I jump? Why did I jump? Okay, I have no idea why I jumped. Sometimes things will happen. Oh look! We have plump helmets! We have plump helmets. People are gathering the plump helmets already. And they are storing the plump helmets in barrels. in summer. Which means we're moving along very nicely. We have plenty of gabbro, and we're going to be able to put that all to use in a little bit. Now that little block that you saw there, right there, that's vermin of some sort, probably flies. Let's take a look here real quick. We can look at it with K, and it is. It's a swarm of flies. And some dwarves will have really bad thoughts about seeing flies, because some dwarves don't like the sight of flies. Alright, and we'll put some beds there. And now when dwarves get tired, they'll just go take a nap in their bed. Okay. Alright. I figure this is a good time to describe another feature we have. The status screen. So if I hit Z, I can actually take a look at a lot of information about what's going on in my fort. So here you can see I can sort of kind of see how much food I have stored. I have 30-ish meat. I have less than 40 and more than 30. Same with plants. And I have between 40 and 50 drink of some sort. Alcohol, be it beer, wine, dwarven beer, dwarven wine, dwarven rum, or some other exotic spirits. Everything that makes alcohol makes its own type of alcohol. Plum helmets make dwarven wine. So, plum helmet's really awesome. But I don't know exactly how much I have. The reason why I don't know is because I don't have a record keeper who's keeping records. If I did, I would have a more accurate count. But I don't. Now up here across the top, I can see what animals I have. Yay, all my animals. And I can actually do some things with them in here. If I wanted to, I could slaughter the animals, as long as it's not a pet. If it comes down to slaughtering pets, you've done something terribly, terribly, terribly wrong. But I could slaughter a hen or 4, or, something else if I didn't want to get eggs from them fairly soon. Or I can slaughter, actually, either or both these, because water buffaloes eat a lot, and they're fairly aggressive, and they don't like each other. But that's okay. Or, some animals have the ability to be trained for something. And we're going to set these up so that they will be trained eventually. So, my female dog will be trained for war, which means she'll become... her stats will improve, and she will become a little bit more effective as a combat unit. She'll also attack towards enemies instead of running away from them. And the male dog I'm going to turn into a hunting dog because, well, I like to keep them separate so I know which ones I want to slaughter later. Makes it easy. Or which ones I want to tie up to certain things. Because I can tie them up and put them on posts. The kitchen, I can actually tell my dwarves what kinds of things they can turn into prepared meals. Now, almost anything that they can eat raw. But I can tell them what they are allowed and what they are not allowed to cook. If they cook something that is a plantable thing, it doesn't generate seeds. So right now I'm going to tell them don't cook plum helmets. But if they brew it, it does drop a seed, and that means that I can plant the seed and it'll be able to be turned into, another plum helmet later on. I just don't have enough plum helmets to be able to actually cook them. Although I don't have a kitchen either, but that's another thing. You can See, I have somewhere between 20 and 30 dwarven wine. I only have 9 dwarven beer, and I have between 10 and 20 dwarven rum. These are probably at the low end of these numbers. So I should probably get my still going fairly soon. Plenty of food, although we are starting to lose variation, so I want to get my hunter going pretty soon so I can actually do that. This is if you have stone that is of a special type, like limestone, dolomite, chalk, marble. These are your flux stones. Hematite is ore of different things. Obsidian is really cool, but I mean, you can make blades, but they're not the best blades. In fact, they're not even really that great. But you can use these to actually, make a building, or turn it into a floodgate or something like that. If they are red, though, they don't even show up as options for dwarves to use them like that. So, okay, we can look at other stone, like all these. These can be used for basically anything. I think, yeah, mostly they're just really basic stuff. So. And you can use them for almost anything, construction or projects, making, things. And you can look at your stocks pages. If you had an appraiser, it would tell you what each of these is. And you can kind of look at it. I have 20 pieces of armor. I don't know what kind of armor I have. I have 7 leg wear. I know what kind I have, and I can even see how good they are. But they're all really bad stuff anyways, so not a big deal. I have some stones that are doing something. I really need to get into prey. I need to get my a office set up. Alright, now it looks like what are our dwarves doing? If you want to know what your dwarves are doing at any given time, you can go to either U, and you can see what their current job is. My miners are all digging channels, my woodworker's building a bed, my hunter has no job. Well, that. And we have some people on break. I probably should have actually brought some crossbow bolts, but oh well. Well, that's moving along respectfully. Alright. Right now, we're actually just kind of in a holding pattern. Things are moving, they're going along, but not super fast. Here we are. You can see they've already put some refuse into the refuse pit. Lungfish remains. Stupid lungfish. Lungfish aren't that bad. They don't bother you if you don't bother them. They're just all over the map on this thing, though, aren't they? They're vermin. You can't eat them. You can't skin them. You can't even hunt them. They're not worth your time. Okay. I think, yeah, it's time to turn on the still. So I'm going to Q to highlight the still, add a new task. Now I can brew alcohol, or I can extract some stuff from plants. I need special types of plants, and I need jugs usually in order to be able to extract from the plants. I don't have any jugs, and frankly I don't have the right kind of plants. So I'm just going to brew me some alcohol, and I'm going to put it on repeat because dwarves love alcohol. The more alcohol you have, the happier your dwarves typically are. Okay. Build another bed, build another bed. Oh look, I got a dwarf sleeping in a bed. Dwarves are happy when they sleep in beds. They're even happier when they sleep in beds that are their own, but as long as they have a bed, they're good. Okay. Have to get this thing done. Okay, it's moving along nicely. Slowly, but nicely, nonetheless. What is that? That's an up ramp. Ah, made out of clear diamond. Interesting. I would not have expected to see diamond this close to the surface. Or frankly, that easily accessed. I'm going to have some fun digging that out. Alright, so we're going to channel our way down to the next level because the first level, that level is done. Okay. So, I think, for the most part, we're probably done with this particular tutorial because we've covered farming and we've covered setting up jobs in workshops, and we've even built a couple of workshops that we need. Oh, look at that, my last bed is finished being built. And now my dwarves are sleeping. Happy dwarves. Okay. So I'm going to actually go through one last thing here. Saving, which is a very important thing. Oh, look at that. Needs distillable item. I'll bet you that means that he actually needs a barrel to put it in, but that's okay. It does mean, however, that the still no longer knows that it needs to make alcohol. I'm out of barrels anyways. That's fine. So, going ahead and we're going to save. So, hit escape to get to the main menus. The main menus. Go down to save. And it saves. That's pretty much it. It will completely exit out to the start game menu. So you can't just save, you have to save and exit basically. And Dwarf Therapist is going to throw an error at me here in a second saying, "What are you doing? There's no fortress active." But that's okay too. There we go. Eventually. But that pretty much covers this one. We've covered farming, designations of different locations, jobs, and setting up queues in your various buildings, and even got some work done on the cistern. So if you have any questions, just put them down in the comments. I'll be able to spot them, and y'all have a good one.